All right, welcome back to the Served podcast. Mike, producer Mike, this is a big day for you. I don't want to make it weird, but we have your favorite player in tennis.
Big time fan.
The DANIMAL is joining us on Served. Danielle, how are you?
I'm good, Mike. I didn't know I was your favorite player, so This is great. I'm super excited to come on the podcast. I mean, I've heard that I've been in a lot of the discussions and have enjoyed listening to some of the podcasts. So I wanted to get on here, and especially after Andy was my first doubles partner. Fun fact, Andy doesn't remember it, but I think I was like 10 or 11 years old. Courier's Kids Foundation. I was part of his little group in St. Pete, Florida. And Andy came to do an exhibition, and I got to go on court with you and play doubles. And I did get the photos from my mom. My mom's not the most tech savvy person, so we might have to have those scanned. But we do have the footage, so we're gonna have to share that with the viewers. So thank you for having me on the podcast. You were one of my favorite players, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but I used to, because your manager kept in touch with me after like I got to play with you, and he would congratulate me on all my little tournaments. So I obviously became a huge fan, and I would clip out your articles and when you had the fastest serve. And my mom has the little notes and those scissors with like the weird shapes. And I would cut it out in a heart, and I'd put, wow, Andy, 153 miles an hour. Love you.
This is actually skin lasering. It's not me blushing. Just so we're clear. But yeah, so producer Mike is very upset that you told that story, because to give you background, we basically started this podcast and no one on our team really knows anything about tennis. Producer Mike comes from UFC, NFL, and so has become a tennis fan, in the last 4 months, understood majors, but he's like all DANIMAL all the time. Loves the DANIMAL.
It's the energy.
It's the energy.
It transcends tennis.
Is it similar to the UFC a little bit?
Yeah.
Actually,
I would say yes, you are.
Actually, yeah.
That's funny.
You wear it on your sleeve, and I love it.
I actually wanted to act, because I was on TC Live last week with Coco Vandeweghe, and it's weird because the way she explains your energy on air, she's like, you win Miami, you show up in Charleston, you're kind of solo, and you're like, I don't know, we'll give it a go, and then you go win that tournament too. So it feels like there's like kind of like a laid back thing off of the court, but that is not what it looks like when you are on the court. It is very intense. Is that an accurate portrayal of the two? Are they opposites?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm totally opposite on the court versus away from the court. I mean, and a lot of times when I'm away from the court, I'm like, wow, I really don't know how I'm cut out to do this, because I think sometimes I'm too laid back. But then when I get on the court, I really channel like the physicality and the emotional energy that I need to play with. And I think it takes a lot of people by surprise, because I mean, I'm definitely not like a stereotypical tennis personality, especially like on the women's side. And certainly not Miss Goody Two Shoes. And nor do I try to be that. I have a big personality, and I feel like growing up as a kid, I was always in different like clinics and groups and playing at the park against like the 4.5, 5.0 men. And a lot of that is like banter. And even though I don't get to do that like when I'm playing professional matches, I feel like a lot of times I'm certainly thinking it. And I think that comes out on court. I even banter with myself or banter with like people in the crowd. And for me, it's all fun and games. I mean, I think for sometimes people watching, they're very offended.
Wow. I mean, I think everyone's offended about everything.
Don't really,
like it's
understand like me, and they don't really like know me away from the courts to know that like most of the time I'm just joking.
It is interesting because you say it's different, and it's so funny how people can consume people's on-court behavior, right? So I think of Andy Murray, who's like on the court, he is all of those things, yelling at his box, doing all these things. Then off the court, he's one of the most intelligent, laid back, kind of calm. You don't see him get worked up about anything. And it's just this, I'm kind of easier off the court than I was on the court. I had a little bit of DANIMAL where I would just like to yell at random Spanish fans when I was playing when I was playing in Madrid. But it is interesting kind of how that manifests in the way people view you, even if it's just not the way you live 97% of your life.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like you can do the right thing 99.9% of the time. But whenever there is that 0.1% where you're a little fiery or a little spicy or you stick up for yourself when it's warranted, people love to give you a hard time for it. And I think that's part of like being a successful person, being a successful athlete, of course. Like if you're not getting criticized, you're not doing something right. So I think the criticism speaks to the success and to all of the hard work you put into your career, because you wouldn't be getting criticized if you weren't doing good. So I try to tell myself that. But yeah, it's like you said, like Andy, I totally get what you're saying about Andy. And I think too, people have to remember with Andy, I mean, he's in a lot of physical agony out there sometimes. I mean, especially in the men's matches, these, 5-setters that go for hours and hours and hours. And when you have a couple of injuries that you've been dealing with and chronic health stuff, like it's not easy. It's not easy. And of course, like you're not going to be going out there with a big grin on your face and just going, oh, thank you. And I'm just so grateful. You're going to have moments where you're mopey and things don't feel good and you might be griping a little bit. That's just part of it. It's like that in any profession. But I think in our lives, like we have the cameras on us and then, you have the people sitting in their basement judging.
Yeah, exactly. I want to give Murray all the credit in the world. I'm effusive. I think he's probably the highest IQ guy that I ever played, which in that generation is certainly saying something. But he was just as mopey when he was 20 and healthy. I'll tell you that much right now. Like I'll just we're putting it on the table, but I love Murray. I think he's the best, but he's the example I use as someone who is just very, very different than the way you would think he is based on the way he presents on the court in all the best ways. Considerate, aware, all of those things.